Hello, hello.
Oh my god, you said hello first for the first time.
Yeah, I was waiting and you were like,
Yay. It's the small things, Christina. It's the small things.
That's what keeps you going.
I am covered in glitter today, and
You
it's
really are.
keeping me going. But we had a question.
We did. We had a question. It was, what's your favorite Disney princess? And then, like, what's your favorite Disney princess?
In Once Upon a Time.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Because mine are different. I don't know if you have, like, the same... Like, if you have an overall favorite Disney princess, and then you have a favorite princess who appeared in the show, like, and how they were characterized or anything. But, like, mine are different.
I think mine are mostly different, yeah.
Okay. Who's your favorite Disney princess, Christina?
Growing up, my favorite Disney princess was Belle.
Really?
Yeah. I really liked reading.
Oh, okay.
Liked being the key word. It's hard to read now.
No, it's not.
It's hard to read, dude. In a world where you have so much at your disposal, all the distractions in the world,
Yeah.
it is so hard to not get distracted while you're trying to read anything. I don't care if it's captivating or not.
I don't have this problem.
Which is so weird. Because, like, of the two of us, you are the most distractible human being.
I love to read. In fact, I will get distracted from the things I'm supposed to be doing because I'm reading.
Wild.
I know. I know. Anyway, my favorite Disney princess.
Yes.
Tiana.
Okay.
Nobody
okay.
will ever top Tiana for me.
That's totally fair.
Like, she was really one of the first Disney princesses that I related to.
Yeah.
Because she didn't need saving. And she was always brought into situations. Like, she was brought into the situation by a man, and she's like, I don't want to fucking be here. Like, I want nothing to do with you, my guy. Like,
Right.
I was fine.
Yeah.
And, like, the evil was capitalists.
That's fair. That's fair.
I loved her. I still love her. Nobody will ever top her for me. And, Stephen, close your earballs. She is in Once Upon a Time, eventually, but she's in it for so little that we don't get to fully fledge out her character, so she can't be my favorite for
Once Upon a Time
at all.
That's fair. I think if Tiana was an option when I was younger, I think I would have gravitated towards her, to be honest. But I only watched that movie once as, like,
That's
a college kid.
That's fair, because I think that movie came out when I was, like, 12. So you would have been in your 20s. So, yeah, that tracks.
Right. All right, so Once Upon a Time, hit me.
You're going to be so mad, because it's such a basic bitch answer.
Great.
Snow White.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm mad. It's a basic bitch answer.
It's a basic bitch answer. She's the main character. I get it. But she has, like, the way they fledged her out, and she has so many facets. Like, she's a fighter, and she's, like, has love, and she just, like, has all these trials and tribulations, and she's just such a fully rounded character.
That's fair.
I love her so much.
That's totally fair. You know, they give her the most possibility than all of the other princesses because she's front and center.
Yeah, that's very, very fair. And do you want a non-basic bitch answer? Because I guess I can give you a non-basic bitch.
Only if you want to.
I would go with Belle then.
All right. See, I assumed it was going to be Belle from Once Upon a Time because you have this thing with Rumple.
I love that man so much. Who's your favorite Once Upon a Time princess, Christina?
Probably the one in college that people told me I was, which was Anna.
You got told you were Anna?
Yeah.
When
Frozen came out, like the Disney version,
yeah,
everybody told me that I was basically Anna.
Does that make your sister Elsa?
Honestly, she's fierce enough.
Great.
Get out of her way. She got it.
I will say, I fully think Once Upon a Time did so much better with those characters than the original movie ever did.
I'm gonna agree with you.
Like, oh, it's just so good. And we get more of the original fairy tale.
Yeah.
So, good shit.
Very nice.
Thank you, Garfield, for your gracious input.
Yeah. He's got a favorite, too.
He really does. It's him. He's the favorite.
You're right. Oh, my God. Garfield as a Disney princess.
He's his own favorite Disney princess. Thank you.
Believable.
Okay, hit me with the watering hole topic.
Okay, so... Does he have a middle name?
No. and we'll keep you advised.
Wonderful. All right. This is the story of the Mary Celeste. 1860 in Nova Scotia, this man, Joshua Dewis. He was a local shipbuilder in the Minas Basin in the Bay of Fundy, and he mostly made smaller ships, and that would transport goods from different towns close in the Bay Area. Now, he eventually was like, this is too small of an area, I need to move on to bigger things, so he went to Spencer's Island, which is not an island, like it is and it isn't.
Okay.
Like, the town that he went to is called Spencer's Island, but there was an actual island, but doesn't matter. It was kind of the perfect spot because it protected him from constant storms that the area had. It had lots of timber in the area. Everyone knew everyone else. If you made friends, you were set. He didn't have to worry about that because his wife and one of the men that owned all of the timber in the area's wife were sisters.
Okay.
So he already had an in. So it was kind of easy way to get started on his shipbuilding project. So they were building the first vessel by hand. There was no mill in the area. Everything had to be shaped by axe or saw. They barely had any schematic plans. The ship that they eventually completed was given the name the Amazon by Joshua Dewis.
Okay. I'm a little let down by the name, Joshua. Like, you go through and you build this whole boat by hand.
Right.
Like, you don't even, like, the freaking little town in Little House on the Prairie has a mill, and you don't have a mill?
Fuck.
And you're gonna go and just, oh, it's the Amazon. Like, maybe that used to be, like, a big, great sounding thing, but it's just so common now. Maybe. I don't know. I'm a little let down.
I don't know. But it was the Amazon, and nobody actually knows why he decided to name it that. Some speculate that it was a shout out to Amazon women from Greek mythology, but no one actually knows. She was launched successfully, no issues at all, taking off, and it was one of the larger ships that came from the Bay of Fundy. It was just under 200 tons. We're moving on from Joshua Dewis. He doesn't matter anymore.
Rip Josh. Sorry, guy.
The Amazon's first captain was the recently married Robert McClellan. He was supposed to pick up lumber from a nearby town named Five Islands, which was the same situation like Spencer's Island. Once he had the lumber, next stop was the River Thames in London. And McClellan felt sick when they were on their way to Five Islands and thought the sea air would kind of help him through everything. He wouldn't get out of the Bay of Fundy before developing a bad pneumonia by the time they loaded up and made it back to Spencer's Island. He actually was thrown into Jacob Spicer's home, which was the one that had the sister and everything. So he got into his home, and he was trying to recover, but he only got worse, and he finally died in that house. And that makes the very first delivery that the Amazon completed was the body of its captain to his widow. So that's a great start.
That as a person who loves all things death and death tourism, that's fantastic. But being like the start of your vessel, we're not off to a great start.
Not at all. Okay, so now we're moving on to a new captain, Captain Jack Parker. He took over. He was tasked to complete the original job with that lumber in London. With a quick snag on some fishing line and some repairs needed at the start, the job was mostly a success otherwise, and the lumber was dropped off. More goods were picked up to be taken to Portugal. They didn't even make it out into the open sea before hitting a British brig. They did deliver the goods successfully, so there was that. They just had to repair the ship. So we're already hitting 2 repairs, just trying to get that second job done. Years go by with this new captain, William Thompson. It's a completely different captain now. And it's had successful journeys across the Atlantic, trading goods back and forth, while every once in a while stopping back at its birthplace in Nova Scotia. Fall of 1867, it picked up corn in Baltimore, brought it back to Halifax. While it was in Halifax, the current captain was given instructions to stay in the port until replacement had been sent. Yes, a replacement captain.
So
they didn't want this guy there anymore.
So the Amazon is going through captains like
you wouldn't believe.
So that, because we're on captain number 4.
Yes. So this guy so far had been pretty successful with all of his deliveries, and yet the owners were dissatisfied with him. Now, at this particular point, it was November, and at that time of year in Cape Breton, They would get some pretty gnarly winter storms, and even the insurance policy on the Amazon prohibits the ship from sailing around there after November 1st, because it's honestly just too dangerous in the area, and you really shouldn't be there with a ship that large. But this ship is in Halifax, so why am I telling you that information?
Because they're gonna travel, aren't they?
One of the owner's sons, George Spicer, was a crewman on the ship, and Captain Thompson kicked him off, so he didn't tell Daddy. The captain sailed up to the no-no area. He waited for a shipment of coal. The most unexpected thing happened. He reported that a winter gale had pushed the ship into the port, and it severely damaged the ship, causing expensive repairs. That is, if they wanted her to float again. So, the insurance company refused to pay because it was specifically outlined in their agreement to not do exactly what he did. So the owners had to abandon the ship because they couldn't afford to keep up with that kind of repair. So now we've got a new owner, Alexander McBean. He purchased the essentially useless ship up to this point, registered it to Sydney, Nova Scotia. That right there is super suspicious because Nova Scotian law at the time said you can't register a ship with a new port unless that ship in question is in seaworthy condition. Within a week, the Amazon was purchased again and re-registered. So something's wrong here, right?
So my guy, McMean, owned a ship for a year? Or a week, I mean? He owned a ship for a whole 7 days?
He did. But within a week after such terrible damage to the ship, he re-registered it. And the only way you can register it is if the ship is in seaworthy condition, right?
So it was fine this whole time.
Yeah, the captain reported that the ship was badly damaged. He fucking lied.
Okay.
He tried to swindle the owners out of their ship, and allegedly he suckered McBean into paying for the ship.
Is it McMean or McBean?
McBean.
Oh, well, sorry, guy, I guess. You only owned the ship for a week. I don't know what to tell you.
So, McBean decided to sell the ship to John Beatty. He owned the ship for less than a year before an actual wreck happened to it in Maine, which forced abandonment of the ship yet again. It was repaired and towed to New York to be auctioned to the public, where Richard W. Haynes bought her for $1,750, or $38,000 in today's money. So he registered the ship in New York, and because it was initially a foreign vessel being imported and sailing under the American flag, Haynes would need to pay import duties to register it. And that just sounded like something he didn't want to do, so he gave her a new name and hoped nobody would notice.
Me too.
He claimed that he had already paid enough repairs on her, so it was like starting from scratch anyway with a new ship. So he figured he'd just name it a brand new ship and tried to get away with not registering it properly. This new name was, of course, Mary Celeste. Nobody knows why he picked it, but it means Heavenly Mary, so at least it's pretty, I guess. Haynes tried his best at sailing her around with little success. He found himself in a lot of debt, and finally the ship was seized for sheriff's sale after 10 months of being in his hands. James Winchester, a former sea captain, purchased the Mary Celeste.
The Winchester, the gun guy?
Not the same Winchester.
Oh, okay.
Once he had purchased her, a deputy surveyor stopped by to tell him that the previous owner was a scumbag, essentially, who skipped the fees to register her properly. And her...
Wait. Can you imagine if you just, bought a car from, a used vehicle, and some guy just comes up and goes, yeah, the guy who owned this Kia Sorento before you, scumbag. Awful. Fuck that guy. Glad you have the Kia Sorento now. Jesus Christ.
Right. Even worse, he said that the previous guy had skipped the fees in order to register her properly, and her registration was fraudulent. So, if Winchester wanted to avoid jail for owning something that was illegal, he should probably just pay the fees right now, right? Winchester.
Who's the scumbag now, brother?
Right. Winchester figured out that he was being blackmailed, took him to court. Winchester won, and then more problems. Remember how Haynes said that he spent so much money on this ship and that it was basically a brand new ship?
Yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah.
So wrong. Mary Celeste was mostly rotted. She needed basically a total rebuild, which cost $11,500 at the time, which now it's gonna hurt you. It's gonna hurt you a lot. $280,000.
Jiminy.
In today money.
It wouldn't even still be the same boat at that. Well, we're back to the old boat principle. If you replace one piece at a time, is it still the same boat?
Right. Total tonnage is now about 90 tons more. It was actually a decent upgrade, but Winchester's pockets were fucking sore. So he needed help. He sold a third of the vessel to a Massachusetts captain named Benjamin Spooner Briggs, and this name is important too.
A third of the vessel?
Yeah. I guess there was another party of some sort that also...
You want to own part of my Kia Sorento? Do you want the engine? Do you want the trunk? Or do you want the cab? Sorry.
I'll take the doors.
Okay,
You can't operate very well without doors, can you? Unless you're jeeping it up.
Oof.
So Benjamin Spooner Briggs, he commanded the ship now. He's the 6th captain in the last 11 years of this ship's life. The first voyage was set to sail from New York through the Strait of Gibraltar and to Genoa, Italy. This would be his first and only crossing with the Mary Celeste. Being a family man, he wanted his family to come with him on his journey. His wife, Sarah, was his childhood sweetheart and daughter of the Reverend and his cousin.
Cousin wife, I love you so much. Come be trapped on a vessel with me for a very long time.
Right.
Gross.
His son, Arthur, was 8, while his daughter, Sophia, was just 2. Arthur stayed behind with his grandparents to continue his schooling. So we've got 3 people accounted for on this voyage. There's going to be 7 more to make up the crew, with a total of 10 souls on the ship. You got first mate Albert Richardson from Maine. He had sailed with Benjamin previously, so he already had someone he could trust. Second mate was Andrew Gillig of New York, also from New York, was the cook Edmund Head. Last 4 of the crew were all able-bodied sailors from Prussia, 2 of which were brothers, Volkert and Baz Lorenzen, and the other 2 from Prussia were Aria Martins and Gottlieb Godschad. First impressions of these Prussian men were that they were good men and sailors, just not the brightest. I actually lied to you earlier and said that there were only 10 souls on the ship. There were 11. The last was the Briggs family cat that Sophia would affectionately call Pooh-a-Pooh. Days before they were about to leave, the Briggs family would live in the vessel while it was still anchored at port. Benjamin thought on several occasions to send for his son and take him on the trip, but ended up deciding against it, and ended up being a good decision, to be honest. This wasn't just going to be a family getaway. They were hauling 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol in the cargo hold to take with them. The alcohol was an ethanol that has additives to make it poisonous, bad tasting, and foul smelling, or nauseating to discourage its consumption by the crew. It was intended to be used for fuel, surgical, and laboratory work at its eventual destination.
How much did they drink?
None.
Thank God. Okay.
Unfortunately, alcohol is one of the more dangerous cargo to travel with.
You don't say.
It needs proper ventilation in order to not have a buildup of fumes, and these fumes could be dangerous to inhale as is, but it could also lead to an explosion should a spark be present. And that's assuming that it's built up in one area.
In the cargo hold, perhaps?
In the cargo hold, methinks. So they took off November 5th, then found the weather wasn't ideal, so they anchored off Staten Island for 2 days, where Sarah sent off one final letter to her mother-in-law before they went off to sea. There was another ship, De Grazia, named after the Latin phrase, by the grace of God, that was of similar structure and tonnage that was leaving the same pier about a week after the Mary Celeste, and heading in the same direction. It was also a structure that was built in the Bay of Fundy, just like the Mary Celeste, but on a different side of the bay. The De Grazia was still registered in Nova Scotia under the command of Captain his name's not James at all, David Reed Morehouse.
I know exactly why you did that. Once upon a time, David and James are the same guy.
You're right.
David, Captain David, tell me more.
There was a rumor that Morehouse was friends with the Briggs family, even dining with them the night before the Mary Celeste took off, but that wasn't confirmed information, it was just rumored. While on their voyage, De Grazia ran into storms while on the same path that the Mary Celeste would have taken, so the logic is that the Mary Celeste ran into those same storms. December 5th, Captain Morehouse saw a ship 5 miles from them. He looked through his glass to see no one on the deck at all. The sails were a mess. The ship looked to not be in control by anybody. They tried hailing the ship many times with no success. So Morehouse sent his first and second mate, accompanied by another seaman, to take one of their boats, rowed to this mystery ship. They searched the deck, found nobody.
Alcohol poisoning, methinks.
From here, there's oodles of different stories about how things went. Some say that the ship followed the path exactly as it was intended, no crew to guide her at all. Others say that the logbook was filled up until the hour before discovery. Some say that hot food was still sitting on the dining tables. Probably all of those are exaggeration and not at all in fact. The only things we know for sure is that the sails were tattered and out of order. The vessel was abandoned with nobody on board at all. The side railing had been removed on purpose. The first mate checked to see that the pumps were in good order, but about 3.5 feet of water was splishy splashing around in the cargo hold. The interior of the cabins were soaked, and many of the windows on the back deck houses were covered in boards and canvas, a clear indicator that the crew had battened down the hatches for the storms. But the weird thing was that the cabin's skylight was open, and that was obviously letting the water in when it was raining, and that's why everything was soaked. The beds were unmade. They had clearly been slept in. Sarah wouldn't have left the beds unmade, probably, unless something pulled them away super early in the morning before she had time to actually do it. Even Sophia's impression was still visible on her tiny bed.
Alcohol poisoning delusion, possibly.
They're not there.
Yeah, so if one of them, like if the captain went crazy from alcohol poisoning, like from the fumes or whatever, and he's like, get up, we have to go.
Maybe.
Okay.
At this point, like, everything's all...
speculation.
Right. We only know what they found.
Not a lot.
Right. All the belongings had been left behind, and technically they couldn't find any of the Lorenzen brothers' stuff, but the authorities had been told later by a relative of them that the reason they didn't have anything on the ship was because they didn't bring anything to the ship. All of their belongings got lost in a shipwreck earlier in the year. There was enough food and water on board to last a crew of their size for the rest of the journey and then some. The last entry on the log for the ship was 10 days before they discovered the ship. The ship's essentially chalkboard of events throughout the day had been written on for the beginning of November 25th. This board would normally be transcribed at the end of the day into the log, so that's when they're thinking they abandoned the ship.
And when is it now? Right.
That they discovered?
Yeah.
December 5th.
Okay, so like 10 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
The crew of the De Grazia had gotten super excited about the money that they could get from salvage of the ship. They had no intention of finding the family. So there goes the theory that the captains were actually friends, because I don't know what friend is not going to care about my well-being if I go missing. The first mate insisted that he could sail to Mary Celeste, so Morehouse let him. They fixed what they could with the Mary Celeste and then sailed her to Gibraltar. And while they were sailing, the first mate wrote in the log from when they found it and updated it through the journey. He also erased what was on the chalkboard to update their own voyage, so whatever was written on that slate is lost to history. Like, he was an idiot, and we just don't know what it says. They ran into a storm, but they just hunkered down, waited out the storm. Once it cleared, kept on their way, made it to Gibraltar a day after the De Grazia. And the crew on the De Grazia received a sixth of the $46,000, which is just over $1 million today. And that's what the cargo and the ship were insured for. The Mary Celeste was seized to be investigated for the disappearance of the crew, but they didn't get much further, to be honest. A sword was found under the bed of Captain Briggs, and the investigators at the time swear that there was blood on it, but both the sword and the entire deck were tested with modern methods, and they found zero trace of any blood on or in any scenario. The blood that they saw was likely just rust. 9 barrels of alcohol were uncovered, and a rope was dangling in the water. It was reported that one of its pumps was found disassembled, but that was a secondary report by the recovery team. It could be bogus. Also, Captain Briggs' navigational instruments and the ship's papers were missing. So a lot of theories have been pushed through the years. One of the more persistent ones has to be that foul play was involved.
Pirates.
Yeah, right. Many believe that either Winchester hired the crew to murder the Briggs family for the insurance money, which would be wild. But there was never really a sign of struggle. There's no evidence to suggest that the reality was this. Mm-hmm. Because everything looked voluntary and in order except for, the sails being out of order. And that was kind of it. Also, who murders a family and then leaves their own ship behind? That doesn't make any sense.
Pirates. I'm still going with pirates,
All
man.
right. Others think the crew on the De Grazia are the conspirators. They believe that the crew of the De Grazia sailed ahead, waited for the Mary Celeste to appear in their path so they could kill the family and the crew, bring the ship in for the salvage money.
That would make sense too.
Two problems with that theory. First is what we've already stated. There's no sign of a struggle. Second is that the De Grazia was a slower ship. It wasn't capable of catching up to the Mary Celeste, much less pass it and wait for an ambush. So,
Well, was there struggle on the De Grazia is the question. Because if they had met up somewhere and invited the crew over to their boat...
it's possible, but why would you invite people over to your ship and just chill there while you're in the middle of the open sea, and there's already been storms?
I don't know much about boats.
Fair enough. Now, some allege that the Briggs family was in on the con with the De Grazia, that they could have just tried to fuck over Winchester or something. But why would they leave their son behind? Briggs is a family man. Why would he leave his son but take his wife and daughter with him? That doesn't make any sense. So, pirates.
Pirates.
Again, no struggle. And the most valuable cargo on the ship was the alcohol. 9 of the 1,700 plus barrels were empty. But those barrels were made of red oak, like the ones that were actually empty, not white oak like every other barrel. And red oak is a more porous wood that would have made it more likely to leak. So it probably wasn't messed with. Right. It was probably just nature. So the actual cargo wasn't disturbed. Why would you just take out a family and not take the goods? Some think it was an underwater earthquake or water spouts hitting the ship, which they say would cause rapid flooding of the ship, major panic would set in, and therefore you have to abandon, right? Now, those methods would either completely destroy the ship, or they would hit and pass the ship so fast that the crew should be able to realize that they're fine, and it's not a fatal scenario. They were well-seasoned sailors. Also, we would have seen more damage to the ship than there was if those were the possible situations. Have you heard of the man named Sir Arthur Conan Doyle?
Yes.
Most people have. Most people have. He's the one who wrote Sherlock Holmes and all of the stories that go along with that. He had written another tale. He wrote about the Mary Celeste. However, he spelled it Marie instead. M-A-R-I-E instead of M-A-R-Y. His version was about an ex-slave who became a homicidal sailor on the ship. It was fiction, but people associated it with a very real ship, and people can't get it out of their heads to this day.
Wow.
Also, they all of them spell it the way that Arthur Conan Doyle did. So, there's that out there.
Did he do that before or after the Mary Celeste?
It was after. He had read about it in the
then that's just fucking Stephen King shit.
Right, but that's a thing that people think happened.
Right.
So it's a theory.
And it's just people think the shit at the Stanley Hotel actually happened. So it's just a Stephen King thing.
Right.
Scenario,
Right, exactly. Okay, so more recent theories. Anne McGregor, she's a woman in charge of a pretty thorough investigation, has a 2007 documentary called The True Story of the Mary Celeste. And she said that the boarding party found the main hatch secure and didn't smell any fumes. And she also thinks that there was a faulty chronometer at play. Briggs may have actually been 120 miles west of where he thought he was, and he should have seen land 3 days before they actually did. Briggs had also changed course and headed north of Santa Maria Island the day before reaching the Azores. She also noted that the previous voyage of the Mary Celeste had been carrying coal, and that the ship had been extensively refitted since. Coal dust and construction debris could have clogged up the pumps on the ship. And assuming the report about the disassembled water pump is true, without that pump, the captain wouldn't have known how much water was in the ship's hull, and it was so packed in there that they couldn't really measure it manually. A sounding rod was found on the ship, so it's possible that they tried reading how much water they had taken, and either couldn't get a proper measure, found that they were taking too much water over a length of time, or that the sounding rod itself was faulty. And with land in sight, no way of knowing if this ship would sink. It's possible he may have abandoned it. So that is what she is suggesting is the reality.
But if they abandoned, do you think they would have made it to shore? Because I feel like they would have gone back for their son.
I feel like they would have gone back for their son had they survived, for sure.
Okay. So they could, the 10 of them or 11 of them abandoned ship, and I take it the cat was gone.
Yeah, no one found the cat.
Okay. So I take it they abandoned ship and drown, essentially.
That is the leading theory, yes.
Okay.
And that was one of the theories.
I'm so sorry. I didn't
No,
mean
it's
to
all good.
jump in front of you.
No.
But it wasn't making sense.
Right. We've also got another one from Dr. Andrea Sella at UCL, which is London's Global University. There's an article of his in 2006 where he built a replica of the Mary Celeste's hold. He simulated an explosion, which he believes is the representative of what actually happened due to the alcohol leaking on the ship. And instead of alcohol fumes, he used butane gas. And instead of wooden barrels, he used cubes of paper. When he lit the gas, it caused a blast that produced a ball of flame vertically. So the paper cubes should have shown signs of burning, or at least some sort of damage, but they didn't. Dr. Sella called it a spectacular wave of flame. But once that wave passed, the air behind it was actually pretty cool, and he goes on to assume that there must have been an explosion that would have been powerful enough to blow open the hatches. It would have spooked the 10+ cat on the ship, leading them to abandon the ship altogether. A spark could have easily occurred on the ship from barrels rubbing together, or maybe a crew member was using a pipe near the area while they were trying to ventilate. Apparently, there were reports of 300 gallons of alcohol that had leaked during the voyage, which definitely could have caused enough fumes for that level of an explosion. Side note, Benjamin was also a believer in abstinence from drinking alcohol. So the idea that alcohol is the reason he may have perished is kind of funny.
Well, yeah, that's kind of great. Whether it be fumes or explosion or whatever it was, get wrecked. Get wrecked, Benjamin.
Right. So there's that option. I don't really have anything to say no to that, or the other ladies, really.
Yeah, I don't think I'm smart enough to dispute either of those things. Going.
Right. There are theories as well of, the Mary Celeste include, like, mutiny, flying saucers, accidental entry into the Bermuda Triangle, even colossal squid or sea monster attacks. There's all sorts.
My favorite things.
It's wild. Now, the last and most likely scenario is the most boring. The thought being that the storms at the start of the journey had jostled the super dangerous alcohol in the cargo hold while the fumes built up. In the log, we actually see a few moments when it was mentioned that there was rumbling coming from the cargo hold.
We love a rumble.
When the weather finally let up on the 25th, Briggs probably decided not to risk his family to the fumes or possibly even an explosion, so he probably told everyone to get in a lifeboat, tied themselves to the ship, technically gave themselves enough distance from the ship if there was an explosion or something. They would actually be all right. They needed to wait out the venting of the alcoholic fumes. They removed the railing on the side of the ship on purpose to get the boat out. They left the skylight open on purpose to get the fumes out of there as quickly and efficiently as possible, and they probably thought that they wouldn't be on the boat longer than a few hours, and that's why they didn't take their stuff or make the beds. They left a lot of things the same when they were boarded up for the storm, because why would you bother messing with any of that? The weather archives show that after the break in the weather, it went back to rain and wind, and lots of it, and this probably caused the ship to take off, since some of the sails were still attached. And at this point, they would be dragged by their own ship. They'd be working against the wind. They weren't going to be able to get back to their ship in the storm. And even if they did, those boats weren't built for this use case. They'd probably wreck on the ship before they can make it to inside of it. So they could let the storm take them somewhere and hope they didn't capsize while being pulled into who knows what or where. Sure, they could cut themselves loose after the storm passed. They could row their way back to the ship or try to row to a nearby island, that Santa Maria that we were talking about. That may have worked if the records didn't show that the wind had been fighting against them. It would have just simply pushed them back to sea. They kind of were up a creek.
If you know you're hauling such dangerous shit, why bring your wife and little child?
I don't know. I don't have an answer for you.
This man does not seem that bright.
You're not wrong.
Like, just because you've sailed before doesn't mean you've sailed with dangerous bullshit either.
Yeah.
And you really want to put your wife and kid in danger like that?
Yeah. Pretty dumb.
Thumbs down.
Pretty dumb. So, clearly we don't actually know what happened.
Yeah.
We don't even know if they were in this situation. They may not have been, but that is, again, not the most flashy. answer, but it might be the simplest, normally the simplest is the correct one. All we know is basically from when the Di Grazia found the Mary Celeste, 378 miles east of where she should have been abandoned when they brought her in. Where they assume she was abandoned anyway. So they wouldn't have been able to find bodies even if they were trying to look.
Right.
So that's a whole ass mystery that people have been talking about for eons. So Winchester made his way to Gibraltar to get his ship, placed a new captain to get the cargo to its original destination, and when he got there, he was billed for the investigation, the salvage, and the holding of the ship. He agreed to the salvage, but contested the investigation costs since it seemed like they had been dragging their feet. Or honestly, it looked like they were trying to get as much money out of this man as they could. Mm-hmm. The Di Grazia's crew was paid 20% of the value of the ship, and the cargo was actually still intact. The ship made it to Italy, and the court concluded its findings in March of 1873. After that, Winchester just wanted to get rid of the damn thing and be done with it, but he had built up it had built up a reputation of being haunted, and no one would touch it. Eventually, he had to lower his price enough to where it sold at a loss. He sold it to this firm, Cartwright and Harrison. They sailed it for 5 years, mostly in the West Indies, and in 1879, the ship hauled a bunch of horses around Africa, but very few survived this voyage due to sickness. In the same year, the captain assigned to the Mary Celeste found himself ill while sailing around St. Helena. The doctor and the captain ended up dying a few hours after they touched land. The ship was sold yet again at a loss to Wesley Gove. 4 years later, Gove was fed up with losing money thanks to the ship. In 1884, the captain and Gove decided to take matters into their own hands to intentionally wreck the ship. Yeah.
You're costing too much goddamn money.
Pretty much.
Crash.
The cargo they had on board was overinsured. They claimed the cargo's worth was about $25,000 at the time, making it around $760,000 today. The reality was that they had nothing of value on that vessel. The most they really had was spoiled liquor.
Spoiled liquor?
Spoiled liquor. So it was really worthless. So January 3rd of 1885, around Gonave Island, Captain G.C. Parker sailed with a crew that knew about the con, and not all of them were on board, so to speak. The ones that weren't interested in being involved with the actual scheme simply thought the evil haunted ship needed to be destroyed, so they were diggity down for that. They planned to run the ship into the rocky cliffs on Turk's Island, but the first mate chimed in to say that was literally how they were going to die if they did so. Like, let's do it a smarter way. So they changed the plan. They ran into a close, well-marked reef instead. The ship's logbook was lost in the crash, and it was the same logbook that Captain Briggs had written in, so that is gone. But due to the investigation, we do have transcripts from the logbook, so the content is still around. The actual book itself is gone. So Captain Parker sold the salvage rights for $500, then filed insurance claims for the value of the ship and cargo. The insurance company thought something smelled fishy. Thank you. So they investigated. The ship actually never sank. It was damaged beyond repair and was left to the reef to deteriorate, but it was still afloat. Sort of. Turns out the cargo is what smelled fishy. It was actually rotten fish and worthless items. The captain and owner were brought to court, found guilty, and to avoid jail and the death penalty, which apparently was the punishment for intentionally wrecking your own ship, they had to pay back the insurance money. And turns out the owner and captain and first mate had all died within 6 months of paying back that money.
Wait. They were punished for wrecking their own ship rather than insurance fraud?
Yup.
I'm gonna wreck my Kia Sorento. Then you're being put to death.
The shipwreck was discovered off the coast of Haiti in 2001, and that's it. That's literally all I've got.
That is some unfortunate news. Having surrounded the ship that cost so much money and yielded so little.
Yup. So that is the Mary Celeste from start to finish, literally. From birth to death, my dude.
I think all of this could have been avoided if it was given a better name in the beginning.
It needed to be Mary Celeste from the start and not Amazon?
Yeah, like, you start off on the wrong foot.
Yeah, I guess. Like, what? Okay, so if you had a ship, what are you naming it? If it's not going to be
the question of the week?
Oh shit! Yeah, let's do that. Okay.
If you had a ship, what would you name it?
Yeah, like, okay, so the whole situation.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
Wild. I feel like it's one of those things where there could have been so much more information, but because they lived on the ship when they brought it back after the families disappeared, all the evidence gone.
Yep.
Everything wrecked.
Yeah.
Kia Sorrento.
Perfect. Love that for us. Okay, so if you could name a ship, what would you name it?
We'll find out next episode.
I'm tired, dude. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.